Welcome back to another episode of the Briefcase in the Barn with me and Gary, a show of a series of the Furious Curious show where we talk about business, Christianity, life, more, all kinds of random stuff.
Anything. We can talk about anything.
Anything.
It's our podcast. Don't want to pigeonhole ourselves to certain topics.
No pigeonholes. How was your week, man?
It's been a crazy week. Business dealings, real estate dealings. Had a school board meeting last night. Went very late. I'm on our kids' school. It's a great school, Cascade Christian School. And I'm on the board. Great board. Wonderful people. But yeah, lots to discuss. We had our AGM as well as part of that. So, and then I met a guy very early for breakfast, which I normally don't do. So how about you? What have you been up to?
I was just hanging out. I mean, I've had no technology since Monday night. I put everything in the lockbox.
Okay.
So all my power cords to all my computers,
Okay.
TV remote, phone. I kept Nicole's phone out, but we changed the password. So she's the first 3 digits and I have the last 3. So for emergencies, if we do need it, we haven't needed it yet.
Unless one of you croaks, then you're in deep trouble.
Yeah.
Then
we're hooped. I have to break the box. But yeah, it's been good. I feel a lot lighter, like my head, like less pressure in my head.
Makes sense. Because my head is just like, I feel like it's just pounding.
Ready to pop.
Deep pressure.
But I feel exhausted. I just feel super tired. And Nicole does too. And I think it's that, like, you know, run a marathon. In a marathon, you just collapse and you're just exhausted. I think it's like my brain has like a break or whatever. And it's just like, I just feel so tired. And I'm just like sleeping.
Okay.
And so, but yeah, it's the lockbox opens on Saturday morning. So the podcast yesterday got released.
No feedback.
I got
Do you
nothing.
normally get feedback?
I usually get 1 or 2 texts.
Yeah.
It's good.
I just happened to stop at a guy's place today, and great guy. And he was just beaking off. He just listened to the podcast this morning while he's milking or something. And he was talking about, he said it was good, but he listens to every episode. But he was saying, he said like, Lion Kamala, like, where did that come from? He was like right put off by that, right? He's like, are you a Trumper? And I'm like, are you not? And his kids, actually, one of his kids lives in Iowa in the US.
Okay.
So pretty well versed with politics. And I said, like, don't put me in that camp, right? I don't.
He was pro Kamala?
No, he wasn't. It was just, when you use that term, and I used it offhandedly as a joke, like instantly people assume things about you. It's so funny how polarized we are and how divisive everything is. And he was, and I mean, we agreed on, he and I actually think very similar about it, how, you know, Christians just, they've lost their mind. Like there's people don't even think anymore. Their judgment's gone. It's like, you know, if you have to be against something, then you know, one side, then you have to be for the other. It's not that simple.
I was interested. I watched a documentary on Vice News on YouTube a couple of weeks ago, and it was one of the guys that started Vice News. So he was a camera guy, and Vice News is, I think it's Vice News. They would go into all the crazy places in like war zones and places like that for a TV show. And he was saying back when he was recording in like the 90s and stuff like that, because he was one of the first camera guys, is that when they would interview people on the street or celebrities and stuff like that, they would just kind of give you their thoughts in like actual thoughts. It wasn't filtered because they knew it wasn't going to go anywhere. There was no like camera. And so everyone was just like way more real. But because of everything goes online now, everyone is way more guarded. So all the content is way more guarded.
Not only goes online now, it may be used against you 20 years later.
That stuff too.
I had a good friend of mine who, I don't think he listens regularly, but he listened for entertainment the other day to the podcast. And he just said, hey, just so you know, your political career is officially dead. Like you've always talked to, like I have an ongoing bet with my brother Derek, who's blind.
Yeah.
Still sees probably better than I do most days, but born without eyeballs. And he and I made a bet when we were in high school about who would be the Prime Minister of Canada first, right? And so like I got right on it and ran for city council in Chilliwack in 2008. Fully intend on like doing all things to win the bet, and didn't win. I was 25 at the time, and so now, my buddy Mike informed me, you are officially
you're done,
not electable with the things that have come out of your mouth on the Briefcase in the Barn. Which whatever. I mean, my wife's happy, anyways.
There's worse things.
Yeah, there's worse things.
Interesting feedback though. Okay, proverb of the week.
Oh, another thing he said. He was talking about, well, he just was surprised that I ever got on an exercise bike or I did any exercise. And then it was like, well, hey, it's a good metaphor in my life, right? Like a flurry of activity and no forward movement. And there was a few other insults said, but anyways, sorry, I've interrupted something a lot more important.
Useful feedback. Thank you for sharing that with Gary. Okay. Singing cheerful songs to a person with a heavy heart is like taking someone's coat in cold weather or pouring vinegar in a wound.
Whoa, one more time.
Okay.
Slow it down for the dumb farmer.
Singing cheerful songs to a person with a heavy heart, happy songs to someone that's like going through something heavy, is like taking someone's coat in cold weather or pouring vinegar in a wound.
I can really identify with that proverb.
Why?
Because I spend a lot of time with hurting people, and people don't like our culture and our society. And I don't know if it's Christian culture. I think it's everywhere probably. I probably don't spend enough time with non-Christians, but people in general get very uncomfortable when people are upset and people are sad and they can't deal with grief. And so people just say dumb things. They say platitudes. And so, or they say pithy sayings that are supposed to make you feel better. And my experience has been, and for myself too, when I've been struggling, like just need a hug, or if your love language is physical touch, or maybe just sit with me in the sadness, say nothing. Just, I'm really sorry. And then leave it at that, and literally leave it at that. Like, don't try to explain it away. Like for Marie and I, it was always in the infertility piece. I actually had breakfast with the guy this morning too, that's struggling with it. Like,
you can't have kids?
Well, he can't right now. He may well, he probably will, but it's like, or whatever. Like most people actually have a season of infertility and then have children, do fertility treatments, whatever. But, in our journey, you're 3 years in, and, and they're saying, well, it'll happen eventually, or have you tried to relax? Or, like, I'm always relaxed, especially when I have sex. But I said, pardon? But no, it was just like, people say dumb things like that, and it's not helpful. It's not kind. And because they don't know what to say, and because they don't want to feel uncomfortable, they just try to make something that makes it okay for them. Yeah. It's mostly because of their uncomfortable. Like,
why is it that most of society doesn't know how to respond to people with hard things?
Because people don't live in reality most of the time. Most people don't like. Everybody seems pretty well put together at face value in society most of the time. But most people in today, as a general rule, are not doing that well, like, or have some part of their life that is not great at all, right? And
most people you ask, how's it going? That's pretty good.
Or fine.
Yeah, fine.
And you know what fine stands for, right?
What does fine stand for?
Blanked up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional, right?
Okay, there we go. Okay. Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, what struck me was just how practical this advice was. And so when I go through the daily Bible reading, every day, there's a proverb every single day. Great Bible reading plan, by the way, which actually just little rabbit trail here. Last week, one of the questions that came in was like, what do you do to be a better dad? Or what do you do to like start changing things and stuff like that? And one thing I didn't mention was read your Bible. I am more convinced than ever, if you're consistently in
and not even a lot, eh?
Not
it's
even
not about a Bible reading in a year. It'd be about just being in the Word daily, or really letting a verse. Yeah.
But I mean, this is 15 minutes a day, and you can read the whole thing in a year.
Yeah, and it's wild.
Pretty basic, but it is literally the power of God. Like, it's His words directly to us. And I am more convinced than ever, if you do that every single day over a long period of time, it will change you. And because ultimately, if you're just trying harder to be a better dad or better husband, you're going to fail. We need to be changed, right? We need to be changed. But
I like what Dave Curry said. He said that if you just got your Bible teaching or your Bible understanding through Sunday mornings, it would take you like 130 some years to get through it or something like that.
Exactly.
He said I just listened to that this morning.
Yeah. But anyway, how many practical proverbs there are, just like for daily life, just like really like,
Can you read it one more time?
Singing cheerful songs to a person with a heavy heart is like taking someone's coat in cold weather or pouring vinegar in a wound. It's not helpful.
Not helpful.
Don't be happy-clappy about someone who's having
Yeah. It's, I would say though, as a rebuttal to what I had said about, sitting in sadness with people, wisdom would mean that, when someone's, starting to be in a pity party or feel sad for themselves too much, or not trusting God's plan, or, and that's where it's more nuanced than just, hey, always allow people to mope, or, there's probably a season where,
it's a proverb. It's a fortune cookie. It's not like
there's just another proverb somewhere that we haven't read in the last week that says something different.
Yes. Oh, I mean,
words of a friend. I can't even quote the proverb properly, but it's one of my favorite proverbs, right, Kyle?
Okay. Gonna go do another daily dad from Ryan Holiday. Let me read this. It's kind of crazy if you think about it, that we hand off the supervision and the teaching of our kids to other people, often for very little money. Now, this is not a comment on anyone's life choices, especially single parents or people struggling to make ends meet. This is more of a middle-class indictment. Consider these dad cliches. The green thumb won't let anyone mow his lawn because they can't do it right. The gearhead always changes his own oil. The Mr. Fix-It who insists he doesn't need one of those crook general contractors to remodel his kitchen. These seemingly self-sufficient parents are the same people who will entrust a 13-year-old neighbor with the safety of their precious children without a second thought. Right now, there is almost certainly a person reading this who refuses to hire an extra part-time help at the office because it would be too expensive. Meanwhile, they have a full-time nanny picking their kids up from school. People who would never hire an employee to replace them at work would gladly hire someone to replace them at home. When you think about it, isn't it maddening? Why on earth don't we instinctively spend our money in a way that allows us to spend more time with the people we love? It's strange that we're so ready to outsource the care of our children, yet we micromanage or refuse to delegate totally inessential tasks that would give us more time with them. All while we tell ourselves that our family is the most important thing in the world to us. So, try take a minute and think about when and where you are falling prey to this contradiction. I think we all are, to a certain degree. Ask yourself where you might be able to buy yourself a little more time and then spend the money. Or don't try to always be making more money and more time away. Spend it so you can spend less time doing chores around the house and more time just being at your house with your kids. Delegate, automate, outsource. Spend the money and take the time so you can take care of your kids more often. Comments? Thoughts?
Made me think of the book Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell that I just read.
It's a great book.
Yeah.
A bunch of guys I'm coaching, I recommend it. They're reading it.
Okay, makes sense. I mean, it's, I do feel like, I just feel like I was convicted by that word.
In what way? You think you
outsource parenting, outsource babysitting too quickly, gone too much. Kids just need you. The kids just need you. They just need time with you. They don't need a thing from you. They just need time with you. They could just, I said to Marie and I were just having a quick coffee before I came here, and it was like, well, we went for a hike the other day on the weekend on a Sunday, and it was like, wow, it was a good time. Like we just need to do that more. We need to be intentional. We need to just load up 6 kids and just do stuff like that. Right. So
I have it on like a weekend and stuff like that. I'll be at home and around the kids. So I'm like, I'm not working, but then I'll still be like, always doing something. I have to clean the garage and I have to do this, do that. And I'm actually not spending any time with them. I'm just like busybody.
Physically there.
Yeah. Like I'm physically there and around it. I'm not actually like spending time with them. It's hard though. Like
for a business owner, that comment of being cheap at work and then not hiring like that, that would be what I've been. And I don't feel I'm as bad now. I really try to get every last thing done that I can, because I just have that capacity of my time on a work day. But I think everybody would fall somewhere in that spectrum or and there's probably people that are doing a very good job and spend a great deal amount of time with their kids.
I think one of the ways to like help fight it too is to think about what you want. Like when we think about 20 years from now, we don't think about like a good relationship with our kids, those things like that. Those are valuable things that would last a long time. But like you don't want to be, have a way bigger company or bank account 20 years from now and have like less relationship with your kids. Like everyone is saying, of course they don't want that. And practically when we think about today or tomorrow,
how we're spending every minute,
then we're like, oh, actually my actions show that I am heading in that direction in a lot of ways. So anyways, show sponsor, Furiously Curious Coaching, where I help overworked business owners, leaders, executives succeed without sacrificing faith, family, and free time. So I'm looking for around 6 guys to start my 10-week coaching program on November 11th or November 18th. I'm not sure exactly. So it's just that maybe that's you, something you're dealing with, not enough time, always dealing with one more email, one more call, one more job, one more sale. There's just always more work to do. You find your health suffering from it. You just don't have enough time. Your marriage is suffering. Faith life is suffering. No time for your hobbies. Feeling out of control. And the businesses and guys I coach now, they know how to run their businesses better than I do. And so coaching is just asking good questions to help you get clarity on where you want to go, what you want to do, what changes you need to make. And so it's super powerful. I've benefited a ton from it myself. And so I do the same program now. So if you're interested in that, text the word interested to 604-703-9045. set up a call, see if it's a good fit. Might not be. We'll just have a conversation. And so text interested to that number, and we can chat. Moving on to book giveaway. Gary has a book, and he's going to read a quote. Book is "Don't Waste Your Life."
Don't Waste Your Life by John Piper. Some of you will have heard of it or heard of his sermon about that. And
collecting seashells.
Yeah, I'm going to read it.
Okay, go. I got a funny story after that about it.
Okay. A tragedy in the making. This is a bit of a read, so forgive me. You can fast forward this if you want. You may not be sure that you want to make your life to make a difference. Maybe you don't care very much whether you make a lasting difference for the sake of something great. You just want people to like you. If people would just like being around you, you'd be satisfied. Or if you could just have a good job with a good wife or a husband and a couple good kids and a nice car and long weekends and a few good friends and a fun retirement and a quick and easy death and no hell, if you could have all that, even without God, you would be satisfied. That is a tragedy in the making, a wasted life. These lives and deaths were no tragedy. In April 2000, Ruby Ellison and Laura Edwards were killed in Cameroon, West Africa. Ruby was over 80. Single all her life, she poured it out for one great thing, to make Jesus Christ known among the unreached, the poor, and the sick. Laura was a widow, a medical doctor, pushing 80 years old and serving at Ruby's side in Cameroon. The brakes failed, the car went over a cliff, and they were both killed instantly. I asked my congregation, was that a tragedy? 2 lives driven by one great passion, namely to be spent in unheralded service to the perishing poor for the glory of Jesus Christ, even 2 decades after most of their American counterparts had retired to throw away their lives on trifles. No, that is not a tragedy. That is a glory. These lives were not wasted, and those lives were not lost. Whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel's will save it. Mark 8:35. Goes on to say an American tragedy. How not to finish your one life. I will tell you what a tragedy is. I will show you how to waste your life. Consider a story from the February 1998 edition of the Reader's Digest, which tells about a couple who took early retirement from their jobs in the Northeast 5 years ago when he was 59 and she was 51. Now they live in Punta Gorda, Florida, where they cruise on their 30-foot traveler, play softball, and collect shells. At first, when I read it, I thought it might be a joke, a spoof on the American dream. But it wasn't. Tragically, this was the dream. Come to the end of your life, your one and only precious God-given life, and let the last great work of your life before you give an account to your Creator be this: playing softball and collecting shells. Picture them before Christ at the great day of judgment. Look, Lord, see my shells? That is a tragedy, and people today are spending billions of dollars to persuade you to embrace that tragic dream. Over against that, I put my protest. Don't buy it. Don't waste your life. I read this book when I was in Mexico last year with Marie for collecting 5 shells. Days. I was not glad. I don't care about shells, but some people do, and that's fine. It's not that there's anything wrong with anything. It's just about perspective. It's a very convicting book. It's a great read. He's a great preacher. And it's interesting because even reading that earlier today, I read that quote. And our church, Matt Shantz, had an evangelism night last Monday night. And I listened to it yesterday while I was driving, and it was convicting. It was when you know, if you're a believer, if you're a Christian and you know about eternity and you know the future and you know what matters, it's a sad day when you're not telling your closest friends or people or just people that you care about, right? And often I don't. And so it was a convicting to me. It was also encouraging. It was encouraging. There was a lot of good teaching in there. But anyways, the book's giveaway. Text Kyle. He won't get it. Well, yeah, he'll get it. He'll be back on his phone when you listen to this. So text Kyle, message Kyle. Whoever messages him first can have the book. Please give it away after you read it. Please read it. And it's a great read.
Yeah. If you don't win, go buy it.
Go buy it. It's a great book. And you can Google the sermon.
It's awesome.
Cheat code. You can Google it. It's a famous sermon.
Yeah.
I still remember where I was standing in my barn when I listened to it, and it was just Pastor.
Do you feel like you have made changes because of it?
No, because that's not my vision of my life. So I have 1,000 areas where I struggle, but that's not my struggle.
But I that first
when you read your thing there about the daily dad, that's convicting to me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
This is not convicting to me.
Yeah. I do think it is for a lot of people though, like how society is selling that dream, like how you
just
describe
retirement. It's not even biblical. Like find in the Bible where it's like, at a certain age, we're just going to hang up our work belt and we're going to just slow down and just spend our time for ourselves, whatever that looks like. But even
thinking just like, hey, once I get like my beach house and I get my 1 acre property and, all the different things and stuff like that, then I'll somehow feel satisfied or be content. And just, it just doesn't happen. Yeah. And the funny thing is how it's still, even myself, like it's still attractive. It's still, there's still something about it that makes you think that it's going to somehow.
Well, it's really tough because it's really not wrong either. Like to have a beach house is not inherently wrong, right? And so I think and that's where the struggle comes in. The problem is that most people that are trying to get it, maybe not the people that have it, but for sure the people that are trying to get it think it will bring them some level. And that was actually another
affections.
Yeah.
I was talking to a contractor a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying there were some really successful guys. He would go and do his work at their own personal houses and stuff like that. And he goes, almost every single one, the husband and the wife were living sleeping in a different room. He goes, all the really well off successful guys. It was all living
struggling,
separate.
struggling,
but they were all the rich successful guys, and it was just like. It's just fascinating how, when you're, to become successful, generally it's not, it's a lot of hard work and a lot of time.
Sacrifice.
Exactly.
Usually in my case and my wife's case, yeah.
Yeah, rarely is it done with a lot of balance. And so sometimes you sacrifice things that big things. Okay. Question for you. What lifts your spirit when life gets you down? When you're down and feeling crappy, having a shitty day, what do you?
Smoking cigarettes.
It's funny how often you talk about that still. You crave these things still years later. How long has it been?
Well, it's been 2018 I quit. I had my last cigarette in Manitoba.
No, it's not that long ago.
No, it's not that long. No.
Okay.
Well, I'm ready to relapse, right? I'm just waiting for one of my kids to start, I always say.
Okay. So that's the first answer. What else? What if you're having you call, is there a certain buddy you call? Is there
I honestly,
do you sing? Is it worship music? Is it?
Yeah, it's that. It's perspective. It's like, two of our kids, their birth parents live in the streets, right? Like I often go there. I don't have a lot of down days. Like if you go hang out at the warming center, for anyone that's listening to this and you're struggling, and if you go hang out and spend an hour or two at the warming center and sit with people at the warming center in Chilliwack or Ruth and Naomi's, and there again, not that you can't, your struggles, like my wife would say, your struggles are still your struggles. And just because someone else has it worse doesn't mean that your problems aren't your problems. But I do think that we spend a lot of time just being really ungrateful for what we have. And so for me, it is a lot of perspective. But
there is also there also is some real
exercise
suffering.
Is the biggest thing for me.
Yes.
If I'm in a bad headspace, is exercise.
I have the same thing.
I have been doing a lot more exercise in the last 12 months, and just, it's really good for the spirit, for sure. Yeah.
And connection. Dave Curry always says the opposite of addiction is connection. And
be in tight community with people.
Yeah, you have to be like when we're feeling crappy and down and stuff like that. Generally, most people's response is not to reach out. No, it's not to talk. It's like they're only calling people when they're feeling good. And he would always say call people every day, because on the days that you're not feeling good, you're not going to call. So
you will not call.
Just call and if you're through a season or just more often and stuff like that, just and if you don't know, who to call, what would you do?
You call me.
Call Gary. There you go.
I'm serious.
Blow your phone up even more.
No,
go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, I have been in that season. I've been suicidal. I know what it's like to have a gun to my head. I know how you can hate or despise yourself. So I understand that. Yeah. But definitely spending time with that person and only with that person who thinks that way. Mostly we just need to be we're always talking to ourselves all day long. People don't realize that. You are constantly in communication with yourself. And so it's interesting when you get into, and granted, I talk too much, and so do you probably, but there's people that don't talk at all, that are only talking to themselves, other than fictitious conversations where they're pretending they're fine to other people. And so if you're one of those people that is constantly feeding yourself, you're in a negative loop, and you're constantly kind of berating yourself or beating yourself up, or, the minute you start to say it to another person, well, first of all, some of it might be true, but some of it's probably not. And so then the person's correcting you and they're encouraging you. And then you feel better, right? Yeah. And so, I mean, for me, it's like I had one guy in particular, Dave, an old guy, and like he just took me by the hand when I was in my early 20s. And I mean, he was funny. He had a sense of humor. He was caring and he was loving. He was a great example of a Christian, but he wasn't hyper spiritual. He could identify. He was gracious with me while I was real. He was real. I was in horrible state. Yeah. And he, to this day, I mean, he's getting older now, and he's just a loving man, right? And so I feel like if you asked me today, I would still call him. He would be one of the first people I'd call if something really, really awful happened, right? And I was in a really bad, but I'm very blessed now, where as a general rule, like, and like you said, like if you're in the Word daily, if you're doing, and that it's a separate thing from depression. Some people are like clinically depressed, and that's a separate issue. But if you're someone that is perpetually living in your own head, you're going to be in deep trouble, right? We all need some adult supervision, right? And
there's also practical things you could do. Like I notice it, like Nicole was telling me yesterday, she's read more in the last 2 days than she's read in like the last like 6 months, because doesn't have her phone. And so you're just reading it. I notice it myself as well. Like I'm reading more. And so when you're not reading, you're, watching usually junk on your phone, or you're in your own head. And so if you want to or
you're looking at social media where you're perpetually watching the best parts of other people's lives being posted, like that'll get you down.
Yeah. But getting like, I guess what I was saying is like reading good stuff will change your thoughts, right? Like what you focus on grows. So focus on things that, are not your own thoughts, because your own thoughts are nuts.
Is that what you do? Do you read? Like if you were going to answer the question?
Yeah. So exercise and connecting with people. I'll call you, I'll call Steph. Mm-hmm. I need to go get out of my own head. Yeah. I had it this morning. So I went and seen Steph, had coffee, and just drove over there because I couldn't call him or text him.
Took him hostage.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. Okay. We are going to do a new series starting next week called The 7 Deadly Sins, Killjoys. I love the title Killjoys, because that's what sin is. It's a killjoy. It kills your joy. So it goes to the 7 Deadly Sins. So it's a small book from Marshall Siegel. He's the editor. At least there's each chapter is written by a different author. And so we're going to do a series. Each week we'll talk about one of the different 7 Deadly Sins. And so if you want to follow along, you can go buy the book, and then you can follow along. And me and Gary are going to read one chapter a week and then just chat about it. And so we'll do a little 7-part series on that.
And you can give your impact too. You could message Kyle or message the show.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Feedback, questions, or
questions or
just
feedback,
thoughts, that
comments,
things where you think we're out of line.
There, so, that's it. We're going to head into overtime and some more questions. If you want to watch overtime, talk about freedom sessions. Talk about if crying is weakness or a strength. Some other stuff. Yeah. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next week.
Have a great week.
Thanks again for listening to another episode of The Briefcase in the Barn. As always, really appreciate it. Like, comment, subscribe, share it with social media, any of that stuff. It helps a lot. Also, if you like the content and you're benefiting from it and wouldn't mind supporting the show, patreon.com/Furiously Curious. I'll put a link in the description as well, or you can find that link in any of my social media bios. You also get access to overtime episodes that way. So thanks again for listening, and I'll see you guys next week.